about building the continent, building economy. This reminds me of a conversation I had with the CEO of the Tony Elumelu Foundation, Ifenyinwa, who was saying that every youth should have an entrepreneur's mindset. Shall we watch her reaction?
The message I'm sending to the young people today is, our youth are our wealth. Africa is the only continent in the world getting younger. Every other continent is getting older, which means they are dying. So the future of the world does depend on Africa. And we cannot be preparing our youth for the world of 100 years ago or 50 years ago. So what we're doing with the Foundation's Entrepreneurship Program is creating not a job-seeking mentality with our youth, but a job-creating mentality. So the message I'm sending out to young Africans everywhere is, whether you're an undergrad or whether you've graduated, you need to think out of the box. Don't just think about, I need to get a job, how can I find a job? Think, how can I create a job? Create a job for myself, create a job for those around me. Because every single problem we see in Africa is actually an opportunity. It's a business opportunity, waiting for the right entrepreneur to come along and create solutions to those problems and create a thriving business. So my call to action to young Africans is to have an entrepreneurial spirit, because the entrepreneurial spirit is about excellence. It's about achievement. It's about resilience. It's about never giving up and succeeding whatever you put your hand to. And everyone in Africa should strive to have an entrepreneurial spirit.
Great initiative by the Tony Elumelu Foundation. I mean, look, the talent in Africa is there. What's been lacking is the funding. A few months ago, a young boy in Ghana actually built a car with scraps. And we kept asking, where is the funding? Can the government support these people? But now businesses, NGOs are making funds available for entrepreneurs, for young people, SMEs to tap into, to be able to fulfill their potential. This can only be good for the continent and also a young population of Africans who are coming into this market.
A major key to unlocking Africa's economic potential will be its small and medium enterprises. We note that this agreement should not only benefit the big corporations, but also the women and youth. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement presents a vast array of opportunities for SMEs to access new markets. Indeed, initiatives such as the Tony Elumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship Program are key for Africa to address the high youth unemployment rate and diversify the continent's exports baskets.
Now, earlier I spoke to Andrew Mould. He is the Chief Regional Integration and AfCFTA Sub-Regional Office for Eastern Africa. I began by asking him how the AfCFTA will impact regional blocs' dealings with the EU.
Well, one thing is we've had these prolonged negotiations on the economic partnership agreements, and to complicate matters more, we've got Brexit as well, haven't we? We've got
yes.
the UK also doing these bilateral agreements. In principle, this is a free trade area. Okay, there is the ambition to move towards a continental customs union, but that's quite a way off still. So in principle, that still allows countries to negotiate with third parties. The only problem there, of course, is that if you have a lot of goods coming in tariff-free from outside the continental bloc, then those rules of origin become crucial. And the problem with the intensive use of rules of origin to avoid transshipment of goods which shouldn't be enjoying the preferential access is there's a cost to it. You know, there's just a bureaucratic cost to the application of rules of origin. So ideally, you'd want the continent to be focusing more on the regional market. And there is some arguments in favour of the continental market being fully established and then negotiating with the European Union in bloc.
Now, remember when the African Continental Free Trade Agreement was gaining momentum, the likes of President Buhari of Nigeria was reluctant into signing this agreement. Now, as it stands, according to reports, there's been more than 30 countries that have now ratified this agreement. In your line of work, What were some of the concerns of some of the member states during the ratification period and also implementation process?
In the case of Nigeria, I mean, it's outside the region, sub-region which I work in, but my understanding is it was principally concerns about transshipment. They were worried about goods coming from outside the continent through countries like Niger, from Chinese goods, for example, being shipped in as though they were African originated. Now, this is precisely why there have been quite prolonged negotiations on rules of origin to try and minimize the risk of this kind of transshipment. So I do understand those kind of concerns, but again, I would point to the experience of other regional blocs. There have always been tensions of this kind, but particularly in agricultural produce, for example, there's often concern amongst farmers that they're going to be undercut by cheap imports from neighbouring countries. One case in East Africa some years back, I believe, was Egyptian flour actually coming into the East African market. Now, I think there's going to be a need to deal with those concerns quickly and effectively. They will arise inevitably, but they shouldn't take us away from focusing on this really important issue of deeper trade and investment links. So, localized difficulties will arise and they will need to be dealt with through the appropriate mechanisms. That's why we now have an AfCFTA secretariat now in Accra. Their work is just starting. They're going to have an enormous amount of responsibilities and tasks to help make this agreement fully operational. But I think those kind of disputes can be resolved with the right will.
Now, Andrew, we understand the boosting of industrialization, investment coming in, increasing in employment, and we understand all the opportunities that comes with it. But my question to you, Andrew, is how will the African Continental Free Trade Area impact economic distribution?
Yes, this question always comes up. It's an important one because I think small countries particularly sometimes feel that they're at a disadvantage. The simulation work that our office has undertaken tends to show actually that the smaller countries don't benefit less than the larger countries in actual fact. And I think from knowledge of economic geography, we know in other processes of regional integration, such as the European Union, initially it was feared that it would be France and Germany and perhaps UK that would be benefiting most from the process, and the poorer countries such as Spain and Portugal much less. And in reality, it didn't turn out that way. And actually, there was quite a strong degree of convergence within the European Union during its integration process. I think we could expect to see a similar pattern for African development under the AfCFTA. And in actual fact, some small states may be well positioned to benefit from the access to the larger market. It will suddenly release them from the constraint of being small economies unable to attract large investment projects, for example, and allow them to have more investment and reach out to that regional market on their doorsteps. So I think some small countries may actually be very well positioned to benefit from this. It won't be simply a story of the large players of the Nigerias, Egypts and South Africas. I think the whole continent has a lot to win from the AfCFTA.
Now, that was interesting from Andrew Mould because he touched on the EPA, which is Economic Partnership Agreement. And these are the type of deals most African countries and also Afro-Caribbean countries have with the European Union. Now, I remember, Sora, a few years ago on this same Economic Partnership Agreement. This was between Kenya and the EU. Most of the flowers we see here in Europe are from Kenya. So what happened was, I think it was time for them to renegotiate the terms and of the trade. But then what the EU were proposing to Kenya, Kenya did not want it to sign up. Kenya did not want to sign up to it. In the end, what happened was the EU stopped Kenya from exporting their goods into the market. And within a few weeks, Kenya lost a lot of money. Kenya then came back to the table and signed the agreement. And the fact that Andrew touched on the importance of Africans, regional blocs, trading among themselves is crucial. And of course it is. because now we don't need to depend so much on the EU market when we can depend on our neighbors.
Indeed, Jones, the Continental Free Trade Area is an impressive political achievement, but it needs to be backed up with action to make sure that Africa's businesses and citizens actually benefit from it. The African Continental Free Trade Area, or even the agreement, is seen as a cornerstone of the European Union's new strategy to develop stronger partnerships with Africa. So the African Continental Free Trade Area serves as a platform for strategies to advance Africa's prospects in the global context. It will not be business as usual at the World Trade Organization.
And that brings us to the end of the show. We would like to say a big thank you for staying tuned to watching the program.
Hello.
So I got a call. The voice on the other end of the line said 1st January 2021. Mark that date in your diary. Africa becomes one market. AfCFTA goes live. For real. A single market from Cape to Cairo and from Dakar to Djibouti.
We received a call from the Continental Free Trade Agreement that we were to participate. So after that, we decided to get the best of all the designers that you have. We selected the best.
I said I dress people and make them feel closer to who they want to be.
In an Africa at crossroads, on a continent in constant search of its own model, and a land highly coveted, it is possible for us to succeed together. Men and women working to create an authentic African label, a label that highlights our social cultural diversity for quality consumption. With an increasingly innovative and offensive youth, always refining our know-how. Let us become more aware that our destiny is in our own hands. African businesses need us. Let us consume local. Let us consume African. Voxafrica, the voice of a proud Africa.